Peggy, do you have a slide you need to put up, or is this fine?
Nah, you can leave yours up. And actually, with that, we can just jump right in because it's 11 now. Okay. So welcome to Querying the Linked Data Universe Word and World Defining with the Homosaurus. This session is being live streamed to the LD4 YouTube channel and recorded, and it will be saved on YouTube for future viewing. Let's see. Participants may wish to use the raise hand function or or ask questions in the Zoom chat to ask questions just because of the size of the group. And let's see, we'll be skipping speaker introductions this time. So the speakers will just introduce themselves when they talk. So with that, I will let you all take it away.
Thank you to everybody who's come here in so far. I will just, okay, thank you, Michelle, for taking an eye out. I will just begin first by saying that I am speaking to you from Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish. Homosaurus itself is hosted at Northeastern and Wampanoag in Massachusetts. All of these nations have had traditional, ancestral, and unceded land occupied and taken, often violently, by the so-called settler nations of Canada and the United States on Turtle Island. I am a descendant of Scots, Irish, and English settlers, and I am uninvited guest on this land, and as such am I a beneficiary of colonialism and genocide. Canada and the United States continue these genocides through pollution, criminal neglect, cultural extermination, and murder. I aim to learn to do what I'm able to do to support the nations upon I live and the people who I live with. And I invite you to do the same and to share where you are joining from in the chat. If you're unfamiliar with this, native-land.ca is a really good resource for this. Welcome, everybody, to Querying the Linked Data Universe, World and Word Finding with the Homosaurus. My name is Bree Watson. I am on the editorial board of the Homosaurus. I'm also a PhD student at the University of British Columbia, where I'm interested in equitable cataloging in galleries, libraries, archive museums, and everything else. And I will give the other board members in the Homosaurus an opportunity to introduce themselves. So I have Claire Cronk, Ken Rolls, Jay Colbert, and KJ Rosson. Claire, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Claire Cronk. I'm currently at Yale University Center for Medical Informatics, and I am one of the board members on the Homosaurus.
Ken? Oh, you muted yourself. You're still muted.
Thank you. I'm Kaylin Rolls. I'm a PhD student at Northeastern, working with queer comics and animation.
And then Jay?
I'm Jay Colbert. It's not Colbert. I'm so sorry to disappoint everyone. I am the metadata and discovery strategy librarian at the University of New Hampshire, and I am also on the Homosaurus editorial board.
KJ?
Hey there, I'm KJ Rosson. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm an associate professor of English and women's gender and sexuality studies at Northeastern. And I'm the co-chair of the Homosaurus, and I also direct the Digital Transgender Archive.
Thank you, everybody. I am going to share a link in the chat, which is a link to all the other board members if you're curious, or if you're curious about the history of the Homosaurus, but I'm just going to touch on it briefly. Despite being a rather young linked data vocabulary, the Homosaurus actually has quite a longer history. It was first originally created in 1987 at Ilia LGBTQ Heritage as a Dutch English gay lesbian thesaurus, when two cultural heritage institutions joined together. They decided they needed something to describe all the material that they had. They worked on throughout the end of the 90s and in the early aughts, working on adding terms for bisexuality, transgender, intersex concepts, but not like in a methodological way, just like as things came in. In 2013, Jack Vanderwell the help of Ellen Greenblatt, who we are obliged to very much, transformed the original Homosaurus into a more inclusive vocabulary and like a very structured thesaurus following the ANSI standard, as many of you are familiar with. These included adding hundreds of terms to the vocabulary and expanding it quite widely. The vocabulary existed as a PDF on a couple of computers and circulated along the ALMS conference, which is a queer conference for archives, libraries, and museums, I believe both in the United States and in Europe. And in 2015, KJ Rawson, done at the Digital Transgender Archive, I think that was done in 2015, but that was when the Homosaurus made the transition to a linked data vocabulary. KJ realized how useful it had become for the Digital Transgender Archive, especially. And the following year, KJ and Jack established an editorial board, which is who you see today. And this 2016 and then 2019 was version 2. This transition involves removing a lot of like the standard terms like emotions or culture, or like to kind of like the standard, and making a much more queer focused vocabulary to serve as a supplement to vocabularies like Library of Congress subject headings and other things. For those reasons, because it's a supplement, it is compatible with MARC and it works really well to describe queer collections, especially. It's become really popular among libraries, archives, museums, special collections that are going through, especially following 2020, redescription and reparative description, which I have a quote here from SIA, Dictionary Archives Terminology, which is really, it's a process of going back and looking at your collections again, going back and relabeling them, recataloging, recategorizing, and redescribing them in a way that's more equitable. And honestly, it just provides better access for people because the collections are now more accurately described for queer material. They're really becoming very prevalent throughout the gallery, like libraries, archive, museums world. And sometimes that's funny in that, like, when the Homosaurus refers to tops, it is very much not what the Library of Congress is referring to when they say tops. Sometimes it's less funny, such as when butches do not exist in the Library of Congress, except as a reference to Butch the dog. And sometimes in the Homosaurus, where you might exist if you were aromantic, you do not exist in the Library of Congress at all. So as the Homosaurus has become so much more popular and has spread out through the cultural heritage world, we have started to receive as a board a ton of requests for help with terms, because although many of these terms might be familiar among the queer community, or many people just raised on the internet, they're not familiar with cultural heritage institutions as much. So we have found that a lot of the terms which do not have scope notes currently do really need scope notes. And if you're not familiar with scope notes, I mean, it's just a statement under a subject heading or I guess a taxonomy or a term. It's just to describe and clarify what is actually meant by that term. So, for example, if I were to pull the scope note for polyamory in the Homosaurus, there's supposed to be two different slides, but example would be cubs, which would be younger, heavier set masculine people, usually with hairy bodies and facial hair, which is a common term used in gay culture. And this was supposed to be the next slide, just saying, like, polyamory is as I just said, a practice of engaging with a romantic relationship with more than one person simultaneously. So today, our goal today is really to help everybody get a feel for what it's like to work in a controlled vocabulary and to work in scope notes. So this is the point where I say there are going to be breakout rooms because it's more of a workshop, but it's much more hands-on. So if you want to slink out right now, totally fine. I'm not going to judge anybody. But our goal is to hopefully to try to collaboratively work together in several different rooms to help develop scope notes for the Homosaurus. I am going to drop a link to the drive that we'll be using. There will be 5 breakout rooms, I believe. And okay. Caitlin, did you want to summarize by talking about the? Thank you.
Yeah. So like Bree mentioned, we're going to be dividing everyone into 5 different breakout rooms. Each breakout room will either have a Homosaurus board member or yours truly. I'm not a board member, but I work with the Homosaurus. And we'll kind of serve as consultants in the breakout room if you have any questions about scope notes. Each breakout room will have an individual Google Doc with a list of terms that don't currently have scope notes. And we'll just ask you to put your name or mark the term you're working on in some way so that people know which terms are taken and which aren't. And like we mentioned, our goal is really just to fill out as many of these as possible. There are some really helpful resources like the non-binary wiki and other wikis on the document if you don't know a term, but also feel free to skip around through the list and just start with a term that you feel comfortable with.
Okay. I don't know if one of our LD4 hosts, Michelle or Elizabeth or Peggy, could put everybody into breakout rooms.
Oh, no, not yet. I thought you guys were gonna do that, but I can do it behind the scenes. Do you just want me to randomly sort people? Into 5 rooms, you said? Okay.
Yep, 5 rooms. And yep, Kaylin, Bree, KJ, Jay, and Claire are the 5 different rooms. But
Okay.
if one of us don't end up in one of those rooms, we can come back to the main room and be jumped over.
Okay, yeah, let's just do that. And then that'll be faster than me trying to sort you guys yourselves.
Great.
Peggy, should I stay out here?
If you, yeah, I think if you want to, you can join a room if you want. Did you get, Kaylin, which room did you want to go to?
Room 1.
Okay, let me see. Ah,